Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about a recent update to the DCA module and the Analyzer DCA Combination Alpha module. Dynamic Take Profit. This is not the same as a trailing. In fact, it is actually very different and gives the DCA modules an interesting and unique way of managing prolonged situations. Here is just a very aggressive momentum. Nothing really spectacular here. This is where all the fun begins. Now this works with both step and price method. I have a very simple system that I have set up to my classic. Now you'll notice take profit now has a lower boundary and an upper boundary. And when they are both the same, it works as a standard simple take profit. When the lower boundary is lower than the upper boundary, you don't see much of a difference. And you won't in most cases. But there are some circumstances, particularly within price action, that you might. So let's switch to price action. And I chose a very aggressive situation that I do not recommend trying to actually trade on. Let's reset this. Now, this all hinges around the maximum buys per cycle. This uses a dynamic fluctuation, and this is the dynamic pivot point. So when the lower take profit is lower than the upper take profit, the system starts at the lower take profit and it takes the difference or the range between the upper and the lower and divides that number on the basis of the maximum buys per cycle. So the more you purchase, the closer you will get to your upper profit tier. So smaller purchases, for example, when this trade cycle resets, the take profit will be close to the 1% level, and it will slowly climb appropriate to this value as a ratio. Think 1 divided by 57, for example, which is some very tiny amount. But as it does so, it will increase the take profit that amount for each purchase. Not overly complicated, but unique. But the fun numbers, the things that change the world and can really help, is when the lower take profit is higher than the upper take profit. Then you will see a change. What this means is that as the purchases are on the low end of the cycle, the take profit starts at 2. As the strategy begins to accumulate positions, it begins to decrease the take profit till it gets to a minimum of the upper boundary, or in this case, the 1%. So as it begins to accumulate large numbers, the system will reduce the take profit to try to get out of it quicker. without necessarily hitting an exit point, hopefully. And if you go to a lower factor, you can see that it very quickly escalates into a situation that is able to really eliminate a lot of market issues. So as it accumulates and calculates, you can see we went from such a high number down to 4 because it seen and recognized a very, very bad market. But the downside is, of course, look at your average profit. So you do need to be aware of how these numbers will affect the average profit, particularly if you do use the price method. It's not so bad if you use the step method, but it's also not as beneficial. But you still see a big difference on the basis of your profit. So I'm going to set this to a 1%. And now let's see if we can zoom in and get this number. So dynamic take profit has a unique place, and you need to verify how well this is going to work with your own situation, because it can do very good. And it can also cause a lot less profit if you don't plan well. So let's set this to a reasonable standpoint. Okay, 2, 1, step. Okay, there we go. So you want to be aware that it can work against you if you're not careful. So let's reset this. We have a 1% deviation, and we're going to reset this to a 2% profit. You'll notice we have maximum buy cycles of 23. Average profit is, of course, 2.3. So let's drop this to say 1.9. And you begin to see immediately the impact of the trades. So as this number climbs and you accumulate, it gets closer to this value, your upper range. So you want to be aware of that situation. So when the lower boundary is greater than the upper boundary, the take profit diminishes as it accumulates. When the lower boundary is less than the upper boundary, the take profit increases proportionally to the accumulations. Sounds complicated, but it's really not. Now, I do not recommend you going out and updating every single chart you own unless you explicitly plan on using this new feature. And it can very easily work with dynamic take profit as well, particularly if you are in the price methodology. And it will cause some very interesting results. So now that we have that, let's set this back to 157 to 50. So that's how much it reduced the maximum buys per cycle. So it took off 7 and it increased the total number of purchases. So play with this, check it out, test it. Notice it went from 356 to 1,200 purchases. So be aware that it will have a significant impact. Test carefully appropriate to your risk assessment. Be sure to like this video. If you know somebody that is interested in a better way of trading, share this video with them. And until next time.